Charlie Kirk Show starts now.
You know, the one thing about Trump in his first term, he complied with court orders. You know, he pushed them to the limit. He often said, you know, he often had tough words for the courts, but he complied. But that's the value of clarity and finality. And a lot of this disorder, I think, is a lack of clarity, that the Supreme Court's got to come in. They've got to deal with this Alien Enemies Act. They've got to define what the president's authority is under that act.
Spoke to our entire trade team this morning. There is a lot of progress being made. We now have 18 proposals on paper that have been brought to the trade team. Again, these are proposals on paper that countries have proposed to the Trump administration and to our government. You have Secretary Bessent, Secretary Lutnick, Ambassador Greer, NEC Director Hassett, and Peter Navarro, the entire trade team, meeting with 34 countries this week alone. We are moving at Trump speed to ensure these deals are made on behalf of the American worker and the American people.
An illegal alien from Guatemala was just charged with his girlfriend's murder in Maryland, same state, of course, Mr. Abrego Garcia is from. She was missing for 2 weeks, mother of 2 young kids. Police found her buried in a forest. Do you know about this story? Do your constituents care about those victims? And do you intend on calling that family, since Maryland residents are obviously a concern in some way, shape, or form?
I think these questions are a distraction from the main issue, which is that Donald Trump is defying the Supreme Court of the United States, and every American should be concerned about this.
This administration is not interested in continuing down the path of doing the same old things as we watch our nation's children get sicker. We need fresh, new approaches. Cancer and diabetes in young people is going up at an alarming rate, and nobody seems to know why. We have to turn our attention to underlying causes, such as chemicals and toxins that children are exposed to, not just more insulin and chemotherapy.
We're excited to be here for the launch of the task force to eradicate anti-Christian bias as outlined in the President's executive order. Together, this task force will identify any unlawful anti-Christian policies, practices, or conduct across the government, seek input from the faith-based organizations and state governments to end anti-Christian bias, find and fix deficiencies in existing and regulatory practices that might contribute to the anti-Christian bias.
Well, if you look at the ingredients for Fruit Loops 20 years ago, it was very, very different than it is today. And today we use chemicals in Fruit Loops that are banned in virtually every country in the world. So if you buy Fruit Loops today in Canada, it is made with vegetable dyes. If you buy it here in the United States, it's made with petroleum synthetics. And as I said in that clip, nobody wants to eat petroleum. When we went to meet with the food companies, I said to my staff, you know, if they want to eat petroleum, they should put it in their food themselves at home. They shouldn't be feeding it to Americans who, without their knowledge, without their consent.
We are also requesting food companies to remove red dye number 3 sooner than the 2027-2028 deadline previously announced. These steps that we are taking means that the FDA is effectively removing all petroleum-based food dyes from the U.S. food supply.
But you told my colleague Dana Bash yesterday that you did not ask Abrego Garcia whether or not he's actually in MS-13. You said you know what his answer is. But how do you know if you did not ask him?
Well, because I know what he's said many times in court, and that's the proper forum for debating this.
I'm here because President Trump asked me to bring warfighting back to the Pentagon every single day. Right. That is our focus. And if people don't like it, they can come after me. No worries. I'm standing right here. The warfighters are behind us. Our enemies know they're on notice. Our allies know we're behind them. And that, in this dangerous world, for the American people, is what it's all about.
Every day, there's a battle for your mind raging. Information coming from every angle with the will to deceive. Fear not. You found the place for truth. The voice of a generation that still has the will to believe in the greatest country in the history of the world. This is the Charlie Kirk Show. Buckle up. Here we go.
Okay, everybody, radio stations across the country. Honored to be with you as always. It's Charlie Kirk here, live from the Bitcoin.com studio in beautiful Phoenix, Arizona. We're going to start today recapping our incredible day in College Station, Texas. College Station is the home of Texas A&M University, Texas Agriculture and Medicine University, a very interesting place. I got to tell you, I have been to a lot of college campuses. I think I have probably been to more college campuses than any person in public commentary. I have been to well over 180 college campuses. All across the country I've been there. There is something rather unique about Texas A&M University. They have a different language. They talk to each other differently. They don't boo. They hiss. They say howdy. They say gig 'em. And they have this war hymn that I got to be honest, I really like. It was terrific. It's their fight song, but no, you can't call it a fight song. It is a war hymn. It's quite interesting. I got to tell you, what we are seeing on these college campuses is profound. It's real. And I want to lead with it because it connects to a piece of data that is very important. And it is a reminder of this truism. In the year of 2025, how you receive your information is more important than even what you are receiving. The how actually dictates the what. The medium of which you view the world, or the medium which you get the information about the world, is critically important. This was not as important in 1995. With the exception of the great Rush Limbaugh on talk radio, if you were to read a newspaper, if you were to watch television, you would get some symmetry of what was happening in the world. Social media has changed all of that. And previously, social media was very difficult for us on the right. Obama used social media to win both in 2008 and 2012. Donald Trump, however, used social media to win in 2016. 2020, we all know what happened. And then, of course, in 2024, we use social media to communicate to the younger generation and move younger voters so significantly, so substantially in a way that shocked the world. A nearly 20-point move. I was sitting down with some of our donors with Turning Point USA prior to the Texas A&M speech. And they said, how are young people getting their information? They said, what shows are they watching? I said, well, they're not watching television. They're not listening to radio. They might do some podcasting, but typically and traditionally, they're just flipping through their social media feed. That's easy to criticize, but honestly, it's advantage us. Our content is better. We espouse things that are rooted in truth, in goodness, and patriotism. And yesterday, this was on full display at Texas A&M University. Just to give you an idea of what the stamina day looks like. I show up at Texas A&M University, and it was hot. It was a hot Texas day. So hot, in fact, that unfortunately, 2 people in our crowd passed out. They're okay, but they were passing out from the heat and heat exhaustion. So I sit there and I will debate anyone that comes up to the microphone for 3 hours in the Texas humidity. Prior to that, I actually sat down with the great Laura Trump for a half-hour interview. After those 3 hours, I try to catch my breath a little bit. And then at 5 p.m., we have to get started all over again for our evening event. And I want to play the evening event. Do we have the actual video? That's the B-roll, but do we have the video with the sound? I got to tell you, I've been to a lot of events. This was the most electric college campus entrance. That is an auditorium of 2,800 people, and we had to turn away another 500 people at the door. So we drew nearly 3,000 people during the day and over 3,500 people at night on a college campus, everybody. Let's play cut 239. I got to tell you, this war hymn that Texas A&M has is pretty amazing. But even more than that, it shows you this next generation is increasing in its attachment to conservatism. Baby boomers are moving to the left. It's a fact, everybody. You don't like it when I say it. The data shows it. The protests show it. Anecdotal, it shows it. They're not moving very far to the left, but they don't like Trump, and they're increasingly more and more sympathetic with what the Democrats are doing. Now, not the wonderful baby boomers in this audience. I'm talking macro. Macro, it is young people that are now becoming the backbone of the conservative movement. Watch this. This should give you chills. Play cut 239. Man, I want to watch the whole thing. That's good stuff. And almost every single person in the audience watches us on TikTok. They watch us on Instagram. They watch us on YouTube. They listen to the Charlie Kirk Show podcast page. And you put all of that together, and you recognize and you realize there's something deep happening in this country. And it's a bottom-up resurgence. It's a bottom-up movement. It's a realignment, dare I say. We are getting back to this idea that actually we want a future. The next generation wants to be able to buy a home, to have kids, and be married. And in the latest poll, I want to show this up on stage, the oldest voters, according to Real Clear Opinion Research, let's put this up on screen, the older you are, the more likely you are to disapprove of Donald Trump. It's just the facts. I see this up close and personal. I see this in my own community. The older you are, the more likely you are to not like Donald Trump. And that is because it is how you get your information. When you are older, you are likely to watch CNN or Fox, not even Fox. Fox is great, but you're likely to watch cable news. Again, Fox has been really great to us. You watch MSNBC, you watch the local nonsensical stuff, you watch the white noise machine, Fox News being exempt from that. That's why you got to tell your friends, by the way, watch Real America's Voice. Watch this station right here. And you're more likely to also be in a position where you don't actually think the established order needs to be disrupted. Many people that are 70 plus do not like the talk of changing the economic order. The idea of holding China accountable, they're like, well, we got really rich with China. The whole idea of disrupting the status quo in D.C., come on, we don't want that. Where younger voters say, no, this established order has been a disaster for us. It's been destructive. And also at Texas A&M University, it must be noted that there was an attempted competing liberal group as well, and they drew, a couple dozen people to their little thing with all this hype, and they flew all these people in, the traveling circus. And meanwhile, we were able to draw thousands and thousands of people. This is highly unusual because I went to the campus of Texas A&M University a decade ago, and we were outnumbered. We were outnumbered by liberals, leftists, and Democrats. What we have done to keep on punching and punching and punching. So now the question is, can we do the same with baby boomers? How do we bring baby boomers and the 70 plus to now be as excited about conservatism and the Republican Party as the younger generation? Let me just say right now, this is a great problem to have. This right here is a phenomenal problem to have. The Democrats know they have a much more troubling structural problem. Their structural problem is one that could end their party over the next 30 years. We might have a 2-year problem, and I think we could get a lot of 70-plus people to come back home. A lot. I think once the information and the truth comes out, because so many people that are 75 or 80 are being lied to by the news that they are consuming. And they watch the news all day long, and of course it's anti-Trump, and of course it's just complete nonsense. We'll talk more about that in a second. As the battle between good and evil escalates, it's easy to blame politicians, government, or poor leadership. You guys should check it out. Pastor Alan Jackson's Angels, Demons, and You. We have an adversary who seeks to threaten, intimidate, and frighten us. Begin to recognize the evil at play in the turmoil surrounding us and oftentimes even in your own thoughts. Angels, Demons, and You. Find valuable insight, practical tools, and biblical truth that will help you navigate what's ahead. We are going to need it. Get your copy at alanjackson.com/angels. You can learn more about Pastor Alan Jackson and his ministry at alanjackson.com. That is alanjackson.com/angels. You see, angels and demons aren't imaginary. They actually exist, and the battle is real, but we need not to be afraid. Get your copy today at alanjackson.com/angels. Find valuable insight, practical tools, and biblical truth that will help you navigate what's ahead. We are going to need it. My friend, Pastor Alan Jackson, has this book, Angels, Demons, and You. It's phenomenal. Check it out at alanjackson.com. Donald Trump just had a Truth Social about Zelensky. Breaking news. We'll cover it in a second.
Where tyranny dies and wisdom lives. The Charlie Kirk Show.
Okay, everybody, welcome back. Email us as always, freedom@charliekirk.com. Let's put up that B-roll again of the Texas A&M students. You know who the supporter of all that is? It's Y-Refi. They help make it possible. It's a lot of logistics that go into this. Look at that. 2,800 students after we had nearly 3,000 during the day. Ton of logistics from security to mobilization of the students to the staff. There's a lot that goes into this. Go to yrefi.com if you guys have private student loan debt. That is yrefy.com, yrefi.com. In fact, a lot of people in this audience probably have student loan debt, or you know somebody that has student loan debt. Go to yrefi.com. That is yrefy.com. Just call 888-YREFI34 or log on to yrefi.com. That is yrefy.com. Can you imagine being debt-free and not living under this burden anymore? The first step is contacting YRefi. So take a look right now at yrefi.com. That is yrefi.com. You can skip a payment every 6 months, up to 12 times without penalty. Go to whyrefi.com. May not be available in all 50 states, so take a look at it right now at whyrefi.com. That is whyrefi.com. So check it out right now, whyrefi.com. Welcome back, everybody. I want to be very clear. When I talk about baby boomers, I'm not talking about the wonderful patriots in this audience. There's been some people very fired up in the email saying, how dare you insult our generation? It's just the data. I mean, Real Clear Politics is really reliable, and baby boomers are 14 points more disapproving of Donald Trump than they are approving. The numbers are the numbers. And also, don't feel obligated to defend your entire generation. Please, it's not your family. There's a lot of disagreement in a generation. Anyway, that's a whole separate topic for another time. Okay, I want to get to this Truth Social that President Trump put up. Very important. By the way, it is the front page of the Wall Street Journal today. Zelensky resists U.S. peace proposal. Ukrainian president says Kiev won't recognize Russian control over Crimea. This is not good. This is bad news. It is Zelensky that is now getting in the way of a potential peace proposal. And President Trump has now reacted on Truth Social. I'm going to read the entire Truth Social post, so I think it's very important. It's breaking news while we're here on air. Ukrainian President Zelensky is boasting on the front page of the Wall Street Journal, as I showed you, that Ukraine will not legally recognize the occupation of Crimea. There's nothing to talk about here. This statement is very harmful to peace negotiations with Russia, in that Crimea was lost years ago under the auspices of Barack Hussein Obama and is not even a point of discussion. Trump is right on this. Nobody is asking Zelensky to recognize Crimea as Russian territory, but if he wants Crimea, why didn't he fight for it 11 years ago when it was handed over to Russia without a shot being fired? The area also houses, for many years before, the Obama handover, major Russian submarine bases. It's inflammatory statements like this that Zelensky makes that makes it so difficult to settle this war. He has nothing to boast about. The situation for Ukraine is dire. He can have peace or he can fight for another 3 years before losing his whole country. I have nothing to do with Russia, but have something to do with wanting to save, on average, 5,000 Russian and Ukrainian soldiers a week who are dying for no reason whatsoever. Blessed are the peacemakers. God bless President Trump for this. You think George W. Bush would care? George W. Bush never cared about the death of innocents. He invaded Iraq and he couldn't care less. He shrugged his shoulders. The statement made by Zelensky today will do nothing but prolong the killing field, and nobody wants that. We are very close to a deal, but the man with no cards to play should now finally get it done. I look forward to being able to help Ukraine and Russia get out of this complete and total mess that would never have started if I was president. Okay, let's go through some of the facts. Crimea is not able to be retaken, period. Let's get a picture of Crimea. Crimea is on the southern tip of Ukraine. Crimea, first of all, is massive, and it's always been part of Russia. It never should have been handed over. It was ceremonially handed to Ukraine. The Crimean Peninsula is the tipping, it borders the Black Sea, and Crimea is overwhelmingly Russian ethnically. Nobody seriously disputes that Crimea wants to be in Russia. It's where Russian wine is from, for example. It's where the Russian naval fleet was and is headquartered. The insistence on fighting over Crimea is what makes this war, quite honestly, insoluble. Evil people in Washington have egged this on. People like Dan Crenshaw see Ukrainians as cannon fodder. They urge them to fight and die in a war they couldn't win because they just wanted to kill Russians. And does Zelensky actually represent the will of the Ukrainian people? We don't know. There hasn't been an election in quite some time. We want peace. We don't just want dead Russians. And for what point is this all continuing? So I will disagree with, not disagree, but I will say President Trump says that Zelensky has no cards. Zelensky does have one card to play, and it's not a good one. Do you know what Zelensky's card is? Zelensky's card is him to say, oh, President Trump, do you want to be the president that reigns over Putin taking Kiev. That's his card. Zelensky is going to emotionally and politically blackmail Donald Trump to keep this war going. That's the only card that Zelensky has to play. The only card that Zelensky has to play is to basically say, if you don't help me, Russian tanks will take over my capital, and that will be a political disgrace and a humiliation for you. His other card, of course, is to try to start a nuclear war. Have terrorists shoot up Russian cities, and he could totally do that. There's a ton of Ukrainian sleeper cells all throughout Russia that can be activated and do all sorts of terrible stuff throughout Russia. Terrible stuff. But think about this. Zelensky thinks he has the cards because he'll say, oh, you don't want to be the U.S. president that had Kiev fall the same way that Kabul fell. I want you to think about how sinister that is. Basically, Zelensky is saying, I know my country will fall if this war continues and you don't keep on giving me weapons, but you're going to be to blame and I will sacrifice my own people. That's demented stuff. Blessed are the peacemakers. And right now, Zelensky is not acting like someone who wants peace at all. And I pray for the goodness of humanity we can end this war. We'll be right back.
Back to this Real America's Voice news break. I'm Terrence Bates. Pope Francis is lying in state at the St. Peter's Basilica in the Vatican as we speak. 3 days of public viewing is underway in advance of Saturday's funeral. You're looking at live pictures of St. Peter's Basilica as thousands of people are there to pay their respects. The Basilica will remain open until midnight both tonight and tomorrow in order to allow the faithful to mourn the pontiff. The public mourning period will end Friday evening at 7 o'clock local time. Saturday's funeral is scheduled for 10 o'clock in the morning at St. Peter's Square. The Pope will then be buried at St. Mary's Major Basilica, which is outside the Vatican and home to the Virgin Mary. Meantime, there is still no date for when the papal conclave will begin and a new pope will be chosen. However, May 5th is believed to be that date. President Trump, in the meantime, headed to the Vatican Friday morning to attend Saturday's funeral for Pope Francis. It will be his first international trip as president and an opportunity to spend time with other world leaders, as the funeral is expected to be attended by most major heads of state. Just this morning, we learned that Argentinian President Javier Milei will be at the funeral. The Pope, of course, was Argentinian. Ukrainian leader Volodymyr Zelensky, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, and Prince William will also be there, along with the King and Queen of Spain and leaders from Italy, France, Brazil, Germany, and the European Union as a whole. And those leaders may try to pull President Trump to the side as negotiators are scrambling to get U.S.-led peace talks between Russia and Ukraine back on track. This after Secretary of State Marco Rubio canceled a planned trip to London to continue those peace talks. The downgrading of talks and Secretary Rubio's absence sends a clear message as President Trump and Vice President Vance continue to warn all parties involved that the U.S. is willing to abandon its efforts for peace if progress on a deal isn't made quickly. Meantime, a number of European allies, including Britain, France, and Germany, are at the negotiating table trying to assess how much of a recent proposal from a U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff Ukraine is willing to accept. The deal will reportedly include Ukraine's acceptance of Russia's annexation of Crimea, lifting sanctions against Russia, and ruling out Ukraine's NATO membership. That's a quick check of your headlines.
Treatment from socialism saves lives. The Charlie Kirk Show is back.
Okay, everybody, welcome back. Email us as always, freedom@charliekirk.com, and subscribe to our podcast. I want to tell you about one of our partners here, Patriot Mobile, and also we're in the Bitcoin.com studio. Remember that, Bitcoin.com studio. Patriot Mobile is a wonderful way to be able to get wireless coverage without funding the woke. Did you know that Patriot Mobile has cutting-edge technology? Switching is easy. No store, no visits, no hassle. Keep your number, keep your phone, or upgrade. Their 100% U.S.-based team can activate you in minutes right over the phone. And get this, Patriot Mobile is one of the few carriers with access to all three major U.S. networks. They have unlimited data plans, mobile hotspots, international roaming, internet on-the-go devices, and home internet backup. You can't get all this from the big guys, so what are you waiting for? Make the switch today and experience the Patriot Mobile difference. Go to patriotmobile.com/Charlie or call 972-PATRIOT, and right now use promo code Charlie for a free month of service. Switch to Patriot Mobile and defend freedom with every call and text message you make. That's patriotmobile.com/Charlie. That's patriotmobile.com/Charlie. Makes the switch today and experience the Patriot Mobile difference. That is patriotmobile.com/Charlie. We need to continue to summarize all of the wins that we are getting out of this Trump administration. We have a border. We are seeing a massive decrease in oil prices. The price of eggs is down. But also, we can't forget what Bobby Kennedy is also doing. There are ingredients in our foods that should not be there, period, that other countries do not allow. And Callie Means joins us now to discuss. Callie, great to see you, author of Good Energy and one of the leaders of the Maha movement. Callie, tell us this breaking news about banning red dyes and blue dyes from our food and the profundity of it.
It's a huge deal, Charlie. The food industry's been making the point that if you basically phase out ingredients that are banned throughout the rest of the world, it would impact 60% of food on grocery shelves in the U.S. They were saying that as if it was an argument not to do it. To me, that's an argument to do it. We have a huge problem where, let's just take the food dyes. These are petroleum and coal tar. Every study and every piece of common sense would tell you that if a kid eats that every day, it's going to cause issues. It clearly causes ADHD. Every other country in the world has led to the conclusion that it should be out of the food supply. The FDA, up until the Trump administration, has been a sock puppet of big food, big pharma. And Charlie, it was momentous and extraordinary yesterday. As of 4 p.m. yesterday, the FDA said this petroleum-based dyes, that they were safe. Marty McCary got up there with Secretary Kennedy and said it is poison. They said the FDA and the U.S. government and the Trump administration is going to take common sense actions to get these no-brainer chemicals out of our food. Charlie, we talked about this a lot. There's a chronic disease crisis. President Trump and Bobby Kennedy talk about this all the time, right? We have 38% prediabetes rates among teens in this country. They're going to take common sense action, common sense wins, and we're going to look back on history at this year and this first 100 days of the Trump administration when finally the HHS, the FDA, and the U.S. federal government stood on the side of kids.
Okay, I want to make sure this is clear, though, that these are cosmetic colorings. There's zero reason to have these if even one kid is hurt by them. Is that correct? How did we originally put them in here? Because we wanted to have our kids be more entertained by their food, that their food was too visually boring? Am I understanding this correctly, that they wanted to make our food more visually appealing, and they risked child's health to do that? That's sick stuff, Callie.
Zero nutritional value whatsoever. They literally had scientists in a lab figure out how to combine literal petroleum to figure out how to make that neon red and that neon blue. And this is really important, Charlie, because I'm a free market person. This is actually a free market movement. This is correction of corruption. I always talk about it. The cigarette industry took over the processed food industry in the late 1980s and 1990s. They're the ones who really popularized these colorings. And they bought off the USDA to say they were safe. They bought off the FDA. They added 10,000 chemicals into our food. The cigarette industry owned 40% of the U.S. food supply in the 1990s. So there was real corporate capture here to tell us that these ingredients were safe for the sole reason of making that color pop. Actually, Charlie, it's amazing. We've dug into this. The U.S. companies make the food, make the Fruit Loops, make all these foods in the U.S. with watermelon juice, with carrot juice, and they ship them to Canada and ship them to Europe. U.S. exported food they make with safer ingredients. So they've bought off the organizations here just to have that color a little bit brighter, knowing that it's harming kids. Actually, Charlie, Mr. Ken Paxton in Texas just filed a lawsuit against some of the food companies because he thinks that they knew this many years ago, and he's actually searching for evidence of that. But that's clear. I mean, the food companies knew what they were doing, and they said it's safe for kids. So, again, just common sense. We've got a long way to go, Charlie. There's going to be win after win coming from Secretary Kennedy and President Trump. But these are no-brainer actions.
And so I want to put this image up on screen, which is U.S. Fruit Loops versus Canadian Fruit Loops. Okay, yeah, our Fruit Loops are, I guess, mildly more colorful, but let's put 253 up on screen. But Callie, what then? So you just look at Canadian Fruit Loops versus American Fruit Loops. Okay, ours pop a little bit more. First of all, kids should not be being pushed Fruit Loops in the first place, okay? Not exactly a good nutritional item to be pushing to your kids. Let's just put it that way. And so these food companies have been doing this for 30 or 40 years. Why has the food industry been poisoning us? Is it more profitable? And name the names of the companies. I imagine it's Kellogg. It's these major companies that have been making hundreds of millions, billions of dollars. And this food diet fight is a great one for you guys. I completely and totally support it. Keep on going, Callie. This is a big deal.
You hit on something else. So I'll name the names. The Consumer Brands Association, the American Beverage Association. These groups to this day are arguing petroleum-based dyes are safe. And the American Beverage Association, Charlie, another huge win from President Trump and Secretary Kennedy, they've said we need to take soda off food stamps. Why is soda, sugar-laden soda, the #1 item on food stamps, $140 billion entitlement program that's supposed to be going to nutrition for lower income Americans. We are literally subsidizing $10 billion a year from food stamps from the federal treasury to soda companies. The American Beverage Association just last week said it was anti-science to suggest that subsidized soda for kids increases obesity. So these groups, the American Beverage Association and the Consumer Brands Association, which is where all these food companies hide, should absolutely be called out. You mentioned the dietary guidelines and Fruit Loops not being healthy in general. That's very important. The U.S. government recommends Fruit Loops as part of a healthy diet. The NIH funded a study under Biden that said Fruit Loops and Honey Nut Cheerios were healthier than ground beef, than grass-fed beef, and eggs. That's literally the guidance that's been coming out of the NIH. That study was also funded by food companies. A very important thing Secretary Kennedy is going to do. It's not regulation, but it's getting control of our dietary guidelines. Right now, the dietary guidelines recommend this crap to kids. They recommend added sugar as part of a 2-year-old's healthy diet. They recommend ultra-processed food as part of a healthy diet. They say meat is bad and the best source of protein is beans. It is insane. President Biden said the top goal for the nutrition guidelines during his term was equity and inclusion. It should be about scientific rigor. Secretary Kennedy yesterday at HHS said a profound statement to me, Charlie. He said sugar's poison. Now, that doesn't mean we're banning sugar. That doesn't mean you can't have your Coke. But we should not be recommending it from the government, and we should not be subsidizing it. That's the first 2 years of Maha here, Charlie. We're going to get the scientific recommendations correct so parents can make informed decisions, and we're going to stop the subsidies. Right now, 90% of our agriculture subsidies go to ultra-processed food, corn, soy, wheat. 0.4% go to fruits and vegetables. There's some basic market co-option that Secretary Kennedy, working closely with Brooke Rowlands, who's been a champion on this, is going to fix.
So just to make sure I understand, this is going to be a guidance memo or a quote, not an executive order. What is the actual technical details of everything around? Oh, you got somebody coming up here? Got especially, guys?
We got Marty McCary, the FDA commissioner.
Amazing.
The FDA commissioner who issued, and Vani Hari on the White House lawn.
What a group.
We got a full court press here.
Charlie's awesome.
Why don't you have Marty comment on this just for a second? Have Marty talk about how important it is to ban these dyes and so on and so forth. Translate that to him, please.
Can you talk about how important it is to ban the dyes?
Well, look, these are petroleum-based chemicals in our food supply, and what are we doing? You know, it's been like 35 years we've been watching this. The data's pretty compelling. Parents are speaking up. They're saying their kids are behaving differently on these dyes. They're aggressive. There's ADHD. They stop. The behavior goes to normal when they stop these artificial dyes, and it regresses when they reintroduce it. So it's like, why are we taking these risks when there are healthy natural ingredients? So the FDA is authorizing 4 natural ingredients today. We're changing the way these get authorized so it'll be easier in the future. And by the time all these steps take place and have been fulfilled, there will be no more petroleum-based artificial dyes in the U.S. food supply.
No brainer. We got Vani Hari here, too, Food Babe, Charlie.
Have Vani chip in,
Charlie,
too.
I just want to say thank you so much for amplifying my voice during the Kellogg's campaign.
2 minutes.
It was absolutely incredible, the grassroots movement, and to putting Turning Point resources out there to capture that moment because, you know, frankly, the mainstream media wasn't there. And so it was absolutely incredible to have your organization carry our voices and look at us now, look at what we've accomplished. So thank you.
It's a big win, Charlie. This is something that really matters to moms. You see this, Charlie, and I know Turning Point saw this, and you saw this early. This is an issue. I remember when Secretary Kennedy endorsed President Trump. It wasn't on front page news, but you were talking about the grassroots. X was talking about it. This is changing the country here, Charlie, and you saw that early. This food dye announcement, that matters to parents. You're seeing the grassroots celebration of this. But I think these common sense wins are just going to keep happening, Charlie, and I think it really matters to voters. And something I said yesterday, you know, truly, where are the Democrats? We would love to be working with them. This is a bipartisan issue, but you know, whatever happens there is fine. This administration is gonna pound on common sense solutions like this.
Love it. Thank you. That is quite a trio. God bless all 3 of you. Thank you, and we are going to make America healthy again. God bless all 3 of you guys. Thanks so much. Thanks, you never know who you're going to get when you do a interview with the White House gang. I loved that. That was great. Email us freedom@charliekirk.com and subscribe to the Charlie Kirk Show podcast page. And that is the Charlie Kirk Show podcast. Right now, Our podcast is doing very well, and we thank you for that, truly and sincerely. We right now are number 6 in Apple News. It goes Megyn Kelly, Charlie Tucker. So we moved one up. And our full annotated conversation with Bill Maher, it's a 2-hour podcast episode. You guys can download our podcast and listen to it in its entirety. That episode is flying on our page. It's 2 hours and 6 minutes. Thank you, Daisy. And thank you to the team for editing it. Our full annotation of the conversation with Bill Maher is available on the Charlie Kirk Show podcast page. We'll be right back.
The vanguard of the next great American generation. Your host, Charlie Kirk.
I like that. Whoever recorded that, that's a good one. Good job, Andrew. All right, I want to make sure you guys are aware of our upcoming 2 summer events. Our Young Women's Leadership Summit and our Student Action Summit, both of which are brought to you by Turning Point USA. Understand what has transpired this last spring is rather amazing. This last spring, we have brought the energy of our off-campus events on campus. We never thought, that was always the goal. The goal was always, can we bring what happens at AmFest and at Student Action Summit on campus? And it is happening. But first, we have our Young Women's Leadership Summit. This is coming up in Dallas, Texas. It'll be there June 11th, 12th, and 13th. Let's play cut 51. If you are a young woman and you want to come to our Young Women's Leadership Summit, that's tpusa.com/YWLS, tpusa.com/YWLS. We also have our Student Action Summit, which all people are welcome to, even though it's a student emphasis and focus, in Tampa, Florida in July. Play cut 52.
Sorry to keep you waiting.
know this song. Why? This is embarrassing. I should know this song. Oh my gosh. All right. Email is freedom@charliekirk.com, bitcoin.com studio. Oh my goodness. We are live from Phoenix in the bitcoin.com studio. Join millions who trust bitcoin.com services to take control of their financial future. I got to tell you about the Herzog Foundation. Oh, man, I know. In a different time, I would get that. Are you rethinking your kid's educational path, wondering if their current school truly supports your family's values? Yeah, of course. It's by Sunshine of Your Love. I was going to get there. The Herzog Foundation is your trusted guide to navigating these changes. Whether families are considering a Christian school hybrid model or homeschooling, they provide the resources families need to make informed decisions. Visit readlion.com to access must-read articles. That's readlion.com. Stay informed, stay equipped, and shape your child's future. The Herzog Foundation is your trusted guide for navigating all of these changes. So take a look at it right now at the Herzog Foundation. Portions of the Charlie Kirk Show are brought to you in part by the Herzog Foundation and the Lion. Go to readlion.com. That is readlion.com. So take a look right now at readlion.com. Email us as always, freedom@charliekirk.com, and subscribe to the Charlie Kirk Show podcast page. Okay, lots of news to get to here. I do want to play this piece of tape, which I think is very interesting. The state of the Democrat Party and where they are going to go from here. The Democrats are thinking about embracing this new thing called dark woke, kind of like dark Brandon, where they want to try to double and triple down on their most radical left-wing policies, going even more to the left. Now, I will be honest with you guys. If we do not pass this massive tax bill, if we do not cut spending, and if we do not fulfill promises on deportations, there will be a fair amount of anxiety out there, and we could have base decay. I'll be very honest with you. Some people are starting to get a little bit antsy. A little bit, just not a lot. I see it in the grassroots. I can feel it. They say, Charlie, where are all the deportations? And the answer, honestly, is they've been enjoined by the courts. That is the honest answer. The courts have largely enjoined our capacity and our ability to do mass deportations. And we need a lot more money for Border Patrol and ICE, and we're going to get that. One of the reasons why we are doing the campus tour as ambitiously as we are is we know that the campaign really has never ended. These people think that they can now end MAGA, even though that MAGA won the election. And so now we are in the trenches. This is all-out political warfare is what this is. Dark woke. Democrats are trying out a new attitude. It's provocative, edgy, and perilously towing the line of not being too offensive. I'm going to tell you right now how you beat dark woke. You beat dark woke by making them answer very simple questions about the most radical trans, social, parental, and education and immigration issues. The economic stuff is also changing right now. You break dark woke by asking them, what is a woman? Should men be able to be in female sports? Should men be able to go into female locker rooms? Nothing has changed except this is trashy woke is what this is. So they say it's woke, except it's nasty and hostile to people who disagree with it. Oh, so you're going to win over more people by being nastier and hostile, more hostile. Here's why they're doing this. They think, actually, you know what? This I finally clicked for me. Blake is going to love this. In Republican politics, there is a belief that you can act like a mini Trump when you run for governor, or you can act as a mini Trump when you run for the Senate. The laws of Trump do not apply to other candidates, period. They think that because Trump is a little bit blunt and that our movement has become very truth-telling, that they need to be like Trump. Let me tell you guys, the laws of Trump do not apply to you. If you think that being dark woke and being nasty to those who disagree with it, so now you're going to be acting more like Trump because that's what you think Trump is. And by the way, woke wasn't trashy before. What has changed exactly? And remember, this is why young people are becoming so conservative, because they are closest to the woke nexus. They are closest to the woke life force. They are on college campuses. They're the ones that are getting criticized and penalized for pronoun police. So it is now the ascendant dark woke. I guess woke emboldens their base. If they want to keep on going on this term, so be it. Can they tell us what a woman is? Can they tell us if a man should be able to go in a female locker room? They can't answer those questions. They can. They will lose. And they will lose again. Second hour coming up.
They tried to shut them up.
There's no guarantee to free speech.
They tried to cancel them.
Deplatforming works.
They even threw them in jail.
Peter Navarro,
Steve Bannon,
now in prison.
But they couldn't stop them.
It's not a prison bill that will ever shut me up.
They call them rebels.
Basket of deplorables.
They call them rogues.
They claim to rebels or religion.
And they say they're outlaws.
These are the kind of guys you like to smack in the ass.
War Room presents Rebels, Rogues, and Outlaws.
You set out to take Vienna. Take Vienna!
The national bestseller by longtime Bannon producer Dan Fluette. Take a journey through the pictorial history of War Room. In a culture that celebrates the weak, show your support by standing with the rebels. Go to doitfluette.com or scan the QR code on your screen. Use the code RAV20 for 20% off your order. Stand with the rebels and never back down.
Back to this Real America's Voice news break. I'm Terrence Bates. Properly taking care of your pet goes far beyond walking them and making sure they have enough water. Making sure that they have proper nutrition is key as well. Joining me today is Dr. Andrew Ciccolini. He is a medical director at the National Mill Dog Rescue. Doc, welcome.
Thanks so much for having me. Glad to be here.
I'm looking forward to this conversation. Let's start here. Give me some simple nutrition habits that can really help us keep our beloved dogs healthy, comfortable, and active, particularly as they age.
Yeah, I think a couple key pieces of advice with nutrition. One, just make sure your pet is happy and fed, but also not overfed. We don't want them to be overweight. And then another key is pet food has all the nutrients that your dog needs to survive, but not necessarily what it needs to thrive. So I think there's some options with nutritional supplements out there to help for your pet.
And that's where pet-made products probably comes in. It's my understanding that there are 3 nutritional formulas that they offer that can really help our pets. What are they?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first one is something called their longevity formula, which I think is comparable to like a multivitamin you would take for yourself. And so it has 4 different nutrient blends that are going to help with things like your pet's immune system, its liver function, just general health. And then a second one is its omega-3 formula. I think most of us are pretty familiar with that. Just like it's beneficial for us, it's really beneficial for our pets. It's going to help with their skin coat health, make it really shiny. And it's also going to be anti-inflammatory. And for those of us watching in Denver, it really helps with that dry skin that we all experience and our pets experience as well. And then the last one's going to be that hip and joint formula. Arthritis is the number one thing I treat in our pets. 80% of dogs over the age of 8 have at least some version of arthritis. And so the hip and joint formula can really help maintain that mobility for your pet for longer.
It sounds like what you're describing is synonymous to supplements that humans might take.
Absolutely. And there's lots of evidence that different supplements benefit us, and then the same evidence exists for our pets. And one of the big keys for supplements with our pets is making sure that the product you're using includes the appropriate amount of those nutrients to actually be effective. And that's one of the things I like about Pet Made is they're completely transparent in terms of how much is in each product that's on the label, whereas other brands may not include that because there may not be enough in there.
Now, similar to in a human, is it advisable that someone who's considering adding these sorts of supplements to their animal's diet also can consult their pediatrician, also consult their veterinarian, before they add that?
It's actually funny you made that slip up. We consider being a veterinarian most similar to a pediatrician because a lot of times pediatricians can't talk to their patient. They have to talk to the parent, and we have the same experience. But yes, absolutely. I think anytime you're at your vet visit, just bring up your different nutrients you're using, the different supplements you're giving, what pet food you're feeding, and your vet can help you kind of come up with the best plan going forward.
And there are some deals, it's my understanding, for people who might be interested in trying some of these formulas you just mentioned. They can find some options for them, but also at a bit of a lower cost?
Yeah, absolutely. So for the next 48 hours, we're offering 35% off if you go to petmade.com and just use the code KIRK, KIRK.
All right. So once again, Pet Made. How did you get involved with this company? And I think it's even more important, particularly from your professional standpoint, why you stand by this company.
Yeah, they actually reached out to me, and I get reached out to by a lot of different products. And so I take some time to research it, talk to some of my friends that are in the nutrition field before I agree to go forward with the company. But the reason I stuck with them is mainly their transparency, and they do have a full satisfaction guarantee. If you don't like a product, they'll refund it.
All right. Well, Doc, we appreciate your time. Thanks so much for sharing your expertise with us. And you do look kind of like a pediatrician as well, not just a veterinarian.
Maybe in a different life.
There you go. There you go. Always a pleasure, my friend. Thanks so much for being here with us today. Once again, folks, the information is there on your screen. Go to petmade.com/Kirk. That's petmade.com/Kirk. You can log on, find out more information about the different supplements that you just heard about, and more information about helping to make your pet a little bit healthier. For now, let's get you back to your regularly scheduled programming.
All right, everybody, welcome back. Email us as always, freedom@charliekirk.com, and subscribe to our podcast. Go to bitcoin.com studio, your gateway to democratized finance, bitcoin.com. That is the bitcoin.com studio. Joining us now is Tim Murtaugh, who is the former communications director for Trump 2020 and also the Trump 2024 senior advisor. Tim, great to see you. You have a unique premise and vantage point because you warned about so much of Biden's failures in the 2020 campaign. And now we actually have to unravel so much of what we've inherited from Joe Biden. So talk about some of the predictions you made that came true, some things that were even worse, and the work that now President Trump has to do to unravel this inheritance that Joe Biden gave him.
Yeah, well, it's great to be with you, Charlie, and thanks very much for having me on. We tried to warn everybody in 2020 what America would get itself into if Joe Biden became president of the United States, and by God, we were right about almost all of it. I mean, you may remember that he ran what everybody was calling the basement strategy, and we said that it was because he wasn't up to the challenge of going out on the campaign trail, articulating his ideas, answering questions coherently from the news media, and actually running a campaign like a grown-up candidate for president. We were right about that. Of course, the national news media said, oh, that was crazy. They're just being careful because of COVID. He's only hiding in the basement because they don't want him to get sick. And then, of course, they all played along the whole time he was in the White House when they were concealing his mental decline and all of that. And we said that Joe Biden was going to be a disaster for a lot of things. We said he was going to be a disaster on the economy. We said that we talked about immigration a lot. We said Joe Biden, and if you let Joe Biden and the Democrats be in charge of the White House, they are going to throw open the gates of America, and they are going to let millions upon millions of illegal aliens into this country, basically no questions asked. We pointed that out day after day after day. Of course, the national news media said, first of all, that's racist. And second of all, you have nothing to base that on. That is a baseless claim. Their favorite thing to say was, the Trump campaign claimed without evidence, they used to say. Well, now we've got plenty of evidence. And of course, President Trump is digging out from under of the, tens of millions of illegal aliens that are somewhere across this country. And every single time he does, the Democrats and the news media latch onto these stories. We've seen it with the alleged Maryland man and all that. And I think this is one of the greatest thing I think that President Trump is trying to do is defend the sovereignty of the United States of America. And that begins with fighting off the illegal aliens and deporting the ones who are already here.
So Donald Trump won a triumphant victory. What people don't understand, though, is when you win and power is changed from one regime to another, from a Democrat to a Republican, you have to get into the weeds to decouple away from so much of the decisions the prior administration made. And we're still learning about some of the gunk, some of the trash that Joe Biden left us, and also some of the landmines that Joe Biden left us. I mean, I hear from agency officials and from cabinet secretaries, they'd say, you have no idea, not just the staffing of the deep state, but regulatory measures, decisions that were made in the prior administration at the 11 p.m. midnight that can't be undone for a certain period of time, or else there's going to be a court injunction. Tim, what also is Donald Trump working on as far as things that Joe Biden left him, the landmines and the decisions that he has to course correct on?
Well, there's one big one that has begun to come to light because President Trump just issued an executive order just last week on this, and it's inside the poorly named. I know everyone loves to name bills on the left. They name bills for exactly what they are not. But inside the Inflation Reduction Act, which did absolutely nothing to solve the problem of inflation that Joe Biden left President Trump, inside the IRA there was something that's come to be known as the Biden pill penalty. And what that is Joe Biden favored one form of medicine over another form of medicine. He favored what are called large molecule medicines. Think of things that you have to go to the hospital for, IVs and infusions, injections, those sorts of things. Favored those at the expense and discriminated against pill form medicine. And that's just a ridiculous idea because pills are 71% cheaper on average than other forms of medicine. They're cheaper to make, they're cheaper for patients, they're cheaper for the entire healthcare community. And look, patients groups, doctors groups, pharmaceutical companies, business groups, conservative groups, everyone told the Democrats at that time, if you do this, this is what's going to happen. And so it passed with 0 Republican votes. And what came to pass was exactly what was predicted. 70%, three-quarters of the R&D dollars have moved away from pills. That means that no new breakthroughs are happening. And we're talking about mental health drugs, Alzheimer's drugs, cancer drugs, those sorts of things. That means fewer pills hitting the market, raising costs for everyone. And again, pills are the cheaper, more effective way that people get their drugs, 71% cheaper on average. And that's what Joe Biden left us, the Biden pill penalty. And there is legislation in Congress to fix that. It's called the EPIC Act. But more likely, it'll be in the, as the president calls it, the big, beautiful budget reconciliation bill where Congress can do that. It's the Biden pill penalty, and it's raising costs of the healthcare system. Heck, Joe Biden said he was going to be the guy who cured cancer. Well, he actually made it more difficult by discriminating against and discouraging the creation of life-saving pills, life-saving medicines that people are used to. It's disgraceful.
And in the Inflation Reduction Act, there's over $370 billion to climate change initiatives. I mean, it's all over the place. So what did President Trump do last week? Remind our audience what exactly he signed and the significance of it.
Yeah, so it's an executive order that addressed the reduction of prescription drugs for Americans, which is of main concern. I'm paying attention to this. I have elderly parents, and like most people, other elderly people in my family, and the cost of the system is of great concern. And the EO that he signed instructs the Secretary of Health and Human Services, that's Robert F. Kennedy Jr., of course, to work with Congress. Specifically mentioned in the EO is to get rid of what's known as the Biden pill penalty now. Here, another way that the Biden pill penalty has been terrible, think about generic drugs. Generic drugs are a very cost-effective way that a lot of people get their medication. Think of Lipitor, for example, which is a well-known cholesterol drug. Because of generics entering the market, people can get their cholesterol medicine for basically pennies per dose. Well, the Biden pill penalty flatly discourages generics from even entering the market. And so those cost reductions never occur. And Charlie, I know this will resonate with the MAGA community here. Guess who has noticed what's going on with the Biden pill penalty? You're never going to believe it, but China. China knows what's going on, and China knows an opportunity when they see it, and they are investing in pill medicine, research and development in ways that they have never done before, because they know that pills are the cheaper way, the more effective way for people to get their medicine. People will take the medicine they need if it's convenient to them. Heck, you can get pills in the mail. And so they're keeping their people healthy on the front end, while America, because of the Biden pill penalty, has backed away from developing pills. And again, 71% cheaper pill medicines over these other forms of medicine. Again, mental health, Alzheimer's, cancer, all kinds of drugs. The University of Chicago says 188 different cures have not been found since 2021, when the IRA and the pill penalty were introduced. And that means 116 million life years off the life expectancy of Americans who are living today. Is that your family? My family? I don't know. But it's the Biden pill penalty, and Congress can fix it.
Tim, about 45 seconds remaining. What else can we expect out of President Trump? Executive orders to make sure that we can wipe the slate clean and we can have a prosperous 4 years.
Well, I'm not exactly sure. Well, I'm going to predict what he's going to put out in executive orders, but I can tell you that the America First policies, and you're exactly right. When you're ripping the Band-Aid off, and when you're in there digging in and trying to undo some of the stuff that's taken hold, just look at the way that the swamp is reacting to him. Look at the way that they're attacking Pete Hegseth, for example. Anytime you bring in a starkly new direction of leadership, this is the kind of reaction you're going to get. And I love that CNN was forced to admit that it's basically a rounding error. Only 2% of Trump voters regret their vote, despite what the talking heads say. Oh, people are regretting their vote. No, they don't. No, they don't. More people regret voting for Kamala Harris. Donald Trump is doing exactly what he said he was going to do on the campaign trail. No one should be surprised. He's coming up on the 100-day mark, and full steam ahead.
Tim, thanks so much. Come back soon. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Charlie.
What do we have, guys? ReliefFactor.com. Get out of pain today. That is ReliefFactor.com. That is ReliefFactor.com. Knee pain, back pain, joint pain, elbow pain. Take a look at it right now. When you hear the term living better, what do you think about? More money, a bigger house, maybe a yacht. What about how you feel physically? When you wake up each day, how you sleep, what activities you can and cannot do. Relief Factor is a daily supplement that fights pain naturally. Developed by doctors, it doesn't just mask pain temporarily, helps reduce or even eliminate pain. So give their 3-week quick start a try. It's only $19.95, less than $1 a day. And it just takes a phone call. That's 1-800-4RELIEF. That is 1-800-4RELIEF. Wherever you're hurting, in 3 weeks or even days, Relief Factor can give you a chance to rediscover the true meaning of living better again. So check it out right now at ReliefFactor.com. That is ReliefFactor.com. So call 1-800-4RELIEF. Email us freedom@charliekirk.com and subscribe to our podcast. Dick Durbin is resigning. I have a lot to say about that. Stay right there.
Truth incoming. It's the Charlie Kirk Show.
All right. Can we play that Texas A&M one brought to you by Y-Refi? It's just so great for those of you that are just tuning in. With the sound, with the music. Can we play it? Our stop yesterday? It was one of the... Yeah, look at this. I got to tell you, I got corrected. I said, I love your fight song. They said, war him. Sorry, war him. YRefi is the sponsor of our campus tour, and we encounter a lot of people with student loan debt, and private student loan debt is very treacherous. If you go to YRefi.com, you can read testimonials from other people. Go to YRefi.com, may not be available in all 50 states. Call 888-YRefi-34, log on to YRefi.com, that is YREFY.com, YRefi.com. YRefi offers a 3-minute rate check without any credit impact, so take a look at it right now at YRefi.com, that is YREFY.com, YRefi.com. Can you imagine being debt-free and not living under this burden anymore? Go to YRefi.com. You can even skip a payment every 6 months up to 12 times without penalty. Go to YRefi.com. Oh, Dickie Durbin. We go way back. Stay right there. Okay, everybody, welcome back. Email us, freedom@charliekirk.com. Today, we've got some welcome news. Senator Dick Durbin from my home state of Illinois, by the way, we're in the Bitcoin.com studio, is not running for re-election. To give you an idea, Dick Durbin has been a U.S. Senator since I was 4 years old. I'm 31. He's been a senator for as long as I have memory. Senator Dick Durbin from the state of Illinois has been the number 2 Senate Democrat since 2005 for over 20 years. Durbin reflects a lot of the rot among Democrats for over half a century. He's a lot like Joe Biden, actually, a lot. When he first joined Congress, he favored a constitutional amendment to reverse Roe versus Wade. Now he's a fanatical abortion supporter and wants abortions paid for with Medicaid. He's been the biggest pusher of the DREAM Act. He wants to have mass amnesty under all circumstances. He's been a leading advocate for the DREAM Act. He introduced it in 2001. He was a vocal opposition to the Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act. Durbin voted against the legislation, which would have said that if a baby is born alive, you must allow it to live in an abortion. Dick Durbin, major supporter of men and female sports. Durbin vocally opposed the Protection of Women in Girls Sports Act. He contended that the bill infringed on the rights and dignity of transgender youth. In addition, Dick Durbin is the worst of the Democrat Party. And by the way, he didn't just support the DREAM Act, he wrote the DREAM Act. He basically is the original amnesty Democrat. But Dick Durbin, tragically, embodies what's happened to my home state of Illinois. When he entered the Senate, as I mentioned, he was pro-life, and now he's radically pro-abortion. Dick Durbin became more and more radical as Illinois has cratered. As Illinois has moved away from the center and has become a left-wing state, with it was Dick Durbin. Dick Durbin has never done anything meaningful for the state of Illinois. Under his leadership as a U.S. Senator, Illinois has dramatically lost population. Chicago has become a laughingstock. It's become more dangerous. It's become more impoverished. It's become less of a center of industry and business. As Dick Durbin has been a U.S. Senator, we have lost major companies that otherwise would have been headquartered in the great state of Illinois. And it is hard for me to even say this because Illinois should be one of the leading states in the country. Its people, work ethic, central geography. Illinois should be a leader in industry. But Dick Durbin is a parasite. Dick Durbin has never created anything in his life. He attaches onto other people's success and then will ruin it. Dick Durbin has not improved the well-being or the life of the people of Illinois. And whoever replaces him will probably be some radical activist from Chicago. They'll probably have some DEI Olympics or something. The best thing that Dick Durbin has ever done is actually retire, unlike Pelosi or Bernie. Dick Durbin has vocally supported the get out of jail with zero bail nonsense that has infected the great state of Illinois. And I talk about Illinois with great lamentation. And it's because of people like Dick Durbin. And it is a cabal. People like Mike Madigan, people like Dick Durbin, they all work together and in harmony to drive Illinois off of a cliff. While the other neighboring states have done quite well. Indiana has done quite well. Tennessee has done quite well. There's no reason why Illinois should have not kept pace. However, Dick Durbin was part of a Democrat mafia that assumed complete control and power of Illinois in the late 1990s. Under that mafia, they realized to pander to the public sector teacher unions, to keep taxes high, burdensome regulation, to give Chicago whatever it wants, to not rein in the crookedness of Cook County. And it pains me to say this because I love Illinois. I love Chicago. We just had incredible crowds when we visited. But Dick Durbin is the worst of the state of Illinois. And that's too bad because there's some phenomenal people in Illinois. And I say this, I do not know if Illinois can be saved in the next 10 years, the next 20 years. It might have to hit total rock bottom before Illinois can rebuild itself. The collar counties like DuPage and Lake, which used to be somewhat Republican counties, are all blue. DuPage used to be a Republican stronghold. It is completely blue. It's too bad, and it's a tragedy, really. And Dick Durbin is largely to blame for that. So corrupt, so selfish, so pandering to foreigners over Americans. Dick Durbin is retiring in disgrace, and he's leaving a worse state as he leaves. We'll be right back.
Terrence Bates here with your Real America's Voice news break. Thanks so much for being along for the ride. Pope Francis is lying in state at St. Peter's Basilica in the Vatican right now. 3 days of public viewing is underway in advance of Saturday's funeral. You're looking at a live picture of the Basilica here. The Basilica will remain open until midnight both tonight and tomorrow, and then allow the faithful to mourn the pontiff. The public mourning period will end Friday evening at 7 o'clock local time. Saturday's funeral is set for 10 a.m. in St. Peter's Square. The Pope will then be buried at St. Mary Major Basilica, which is outside the Vatican and home to the Virgin Mary. Meantime, there's still no date for when the papal conclave will begin in order to choose a new pope. However, May 5th is believed to be that date. Wall Street opened with big gains today following President Trump saying that he won't try to fire Fed Chairman Jerome Powell. The Trump administration also says the trade war with China isn't sustainable. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent even says that he expects de-escalation when it comes to the tariff back and forth with China. During remarks before the Institute of International Finance this morning, he proposed a rest in economic philosophy.
And I think that our Chinese counterparts that will come to this realization, and if some of our policies, sometimes it takes an external push. Right. Alternatively, what I have said previously, there is an opportunity for a big deal here, that the U.S. is looking to rebalance to more manufacturing. The identity of that would be less consumption. If China is serious on less dependence on export-led manufacturing growth and a rebalancing toward a domestic economy, I think they use the term dual circulation. Right. Well, right now it's really singular circulation. And if they want to rebalance, let's do it together.
Meantime, the temperature of the rhetoric between the Trump administration and China is starting to cool a bit, with China saying the U.S. exerting pressure is not the right way to reach a deal. That's a quick check of your headlines. I'm Terrence Bates.
Leftists hate him. Nobody ignores him. It's the Charlie Kirk Show.
Okay, everybody, welcome back. Email us as always, freedom@charliekirk.com, and subscribe to our podcast brought to you by the Bitcoin.com studio. That is the Bitcoin.com studio. Okay, what do we have? What do we have, guys? My Patriot Supply. With everything going on this year, fires, windstorms, and power outages hitting harder than ever, I've been looking for ways to protect my home and my family. That's why I went with the Grid Doctor 3300 from My Patriot Supply. This thing is a total game changer. It's the only solar generator with built-in EMP protection, and it has the power to run your fridge, medical devices, lights, and you name it. So check it out right now. It's quiet, fume-free, safe to use indoors and out, and totally portable. In a world where the grid is becoming less reliable by the day, the Grid Doctor 3300 gives me peace of mind and practical everyday use. You can get yours today at mypatriotsupply.com. Again, that's mypatriotsupply.com, America's trusted source for emergency preparedness. Portions of the Charlie Kirk Show are brought to you in part by mypatriotsupply.com. That is mypatriotsupply.com. So check it out, mypatriotsupply.com. Joining us now is John Yoo, Distinguished Visiting Professor at University of Texas at Austin and Law Professor at UC Berkeley. So, Professor Yoo, I have several questions here. What due process is an illegal alien afforded to if they have been here for, let's say, 3 years, and without warrant, without invitation? What kind of due process constitutionally do they have to have before we're allowed to return them to their country of origin?
Charlie, great to be with you. Thanks for having me back. Everybody should understand that when we say due process, it means different things in different places. So the ultimate form of due process is when you or I are charged by the government with a crime. Then we get jury trials, we get Miranda warnings, we get the right to a lawyer. Even at the government's expense, we have the right to appeal all the way to the Supreme Court, and so on. That's not the kind of due process that illegal aliens get. They can get a fairly minimal amount of due process. Maybe all the right they have is to be presented for an immigration judge, have the right to claim that they're not who the government says they are, maybe get a right to go to a federal court after that, and then it's done. And they don't get a jury trial. It's not a criminal proceeding where the government has to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the alien is here illegally. It's a much lower standard of evidence, and it can be done quickly and swiftly.
Okay, so the quickly and swiftly though, and the way that this is working though, they're saying that some of these court dates are going to be, it's going to be years of proceedings per illegal alien. I mean, if we could potentially only be able to deport a couple 100,000 people under this. This is largely unworkable.
It doesn't have to be that way. The reason why it's taking so long is because Congress, for many decades, has refused to pay for enough officials, refused to pay for enough border agents, refused to pay for a wall, refused to pay for enough immigration judges. If you could have more immigration judges, you could speed that whole process up. And I think that's actually in part what the Trump administration is trying to do when it's trying to deport people under the Alien Enemies Act rather than under the regular immigration laws, is that they're trying to impress on everybody the need for speed, and that the speed is really up to Congress. Congress has to provide more money. And Congress has said they always say they want to help fix the border problem. Well, here's their great chance to do it.
Right. So let's just go a level deeper into this, which is this seems like it's completely and totally unworkable right now. People in our coalition are frustrated because it seems like left-wing courts are in fact requiring a full 3-year process for every illegal alien. Is there any way for the administration to create more immigration judges without direct congressional action?
Well, this is why this other area that they're fighting about, impoundment and reallocating funding, downsizing the government, closing down wasteful spending, maybe you can move some of that money during this time of emergency, right? The one thing Trump has done is declared a national emergency at the border because of immigration. That gives him the ability perhaps to move some more money. Also, he has to, I think, fight with these wayward rogue trial judges there are trial judges in the country who I think have gone beyond their constitutional role and are trying to interfere with the executive branch, with the president's rightful authority over national security and immigration. But at bottom, it's really a question of resources. You have to speed up these hearings. You have to speed up the detentions at the front level. And then you have to fight with the courts, go all the way to the Supreme Court if necessary, to make clear to these lower court judges that they don't have the right, as you say, Charlie, to turn it into a 3-year process when it could be less than a year. It could be done quickly if there's cooperation between the Congress and the president and the courts.
Right. So you've raised some questions about Trump's use of the Alien Enemies Act. You've obviously had criticisms for the district court judges. What is a workable off-ramp here where we uphold the SCOTUS rulings?
I worry what you see here are you got these district judges, some of whom want to press and create some kind of constitutional crisis by going beyond their role. At the same time, I think there's some people in the Trump administration who could also pull us away from the brink of some kind of confrontation. And I actually think the Supreme Court has intervened several times to give the benefit of the doubt to the Trump administration. So, for example, when they told the trial judge in this Garcia case, you can't force the government to bring Garcia immediately into court. What are you going to do? Order the president to invade El Salvador and grab him out of the prison? They said, no, re-examine. The government has to facilitate his return, but judges have to respect the president's authority under the Constitution into foreign affairs. Courts can't order the president to conduct diplomacy. They can't order the president to conduct national security. On the other hand, I think Trump has the authority to declare an invasion, but he needs to tell the American people and the courts why we're under invasion, why we're at a state of war with Venezuela, why this Tren de Aragua group is a terrorist group that's acting as an arm of the Venezuelan government. The more he can provide that information, the easier it is for the courts to accept it. And then we can step away from the brink of some kind of confrontation between the president and the judiciary.
So are there any other potential solutions here? Because Trump does act as the commander in chief, and we know what's happening here is that far left-wing activists are trying to slow down the gears of deportation. Basically, without a fix here, we will not have mass deportations. We'll actually have less deportations than Obama or even Biden did.
I'm afraid that's right. I mean, part of what Trump really is doing here, I think he is doing and has to do, is to deter people from coming in the first place. or to make clear if they hit the border, they're going to be turned right around and sent back. And so one part of that is showing that we're not going to have the open borders that Biden did, that we're not going to just catch people and release them into the country, that we're going to tighten up the immigration rule process. But another part of that is, as you suggest, Charlie, we have to start speeding up the role of the court so that they can't delay every single deportation into a 3-year odyssey where people can spend years and years here while their lawyers just delay things in court. And so I think there is some value for President Trump fighting these rogue district judges all the way to the Supreme Court, but also being more open with the court and the American people about why he's doing this. That kind of deterrence, I hope, will prevent people from coming across the border in the first place. I think he's having a lot of effect there. Under Biden's worst months in his open borders policy, we were catching or encountering maybe 350,000 a month, illegal aliens a month at the border. And you know what, Charlie? That number is down to 7,000 a month. That's an amazing achievement. And I think Trump has to keep this strong deterrent in effect in order to keep those numbers low and keep them dropping.
Yeah, we're only on pace right now for about 292,000 deportations a year, largely because of the courts and just kind of slowing it down to this grinding process. And so I know that you've argued for executive authority and ability here. It's just very hard for our audience to comprehend why is it someone who breaks into our country should be afforded all of these extra legal rights when they're not a U.S. citizen. So explain that to us.
I know it's very hard for people to understand, but the 14th Amendment's guarantee of due process doesn't only apply to citizens. It also applies to all people in the United States. So everyone in the United States, even people who get into the country illegally, have a right to due process. But the important thing for people to remember is that the level of due process can be different. The government and the courts have recognized that illegal aliens shouldn't get the same level of due process as, say, you and me, Charlie, if we commit a crime. That's why they don't get all the protections of the Bill of Rights that you will get in a criminal trial. That's why there is the ability to speed up the process, to allow the government to present proof and to have the alien try to prove that he's not here illegally or she's here illegally. But then if they lose, they should be deported quickly. Maybe it's the case that Congress should expand the number of judges, expand the number of border agents, but then make the due process even lighter and make the process proceed even faster.
Yeah, I hope that happens, but it does not look good at this point. The will of the people will be thwarted by an unelected judiciary, it seems.
I'm afraid that's true. And this is really up to the Supreme Court now. It's the Supreme Court's problem. There are about 1,000 trial judges all around, the federal trial judges sitting all around the country. Some of them obviously do not agree with President Trump's immigration agenda. They would be more than happy to have the Biden system where years and years and years are spent hearing deportation cases. It's up to the Supreme Court. And Trump is sending cases forward that give them the opportunity to control the judiciary, to make clear that these rogue trial judges are not there to try to frustrate the agenda that the majority of the Americans support when they elected President Trump to speed up the immigration deportation system. That said, the judges there are there to make sure that the due process protections are observed and honored. And I think there is the possibility of a compromise between the two branches. The worst thing can happen is if these rogue trial judges keep slowing things down and frustrates the agenda that the majority of Americans voted for in the immigration area. And then that leads to some kind of unwarranted confrontation between the president and the Supreme Court.
John Yoo, thank you for your time here. I certainly hope we have a more optimistic conclusion here, because it's not good for anybody, not good for our country, if all of a sudden the people vote for something and they don't not just get it, but their will gets so significantly thwarted. So thank you so much for your time.
I couldn't agree with you more, Charlie. Thanks very much for having me back.
Email us, freedom@charliekirk.com. I want to tell you about Z-Factor. If you guys want to get a good night's sleep, go to Z-Factor. That's relieffactor.com. We all know how challenging it can be to get the quality sleep that we need. It helps relax your mind. It's Z-Factor from Relief Factor has the formula to help change that. If you're looking for the right formula for better Z's, give Z-Factor a try. Call 1-800-4RELIEF. That is 1-800-4RELIEF, or visit relieffactor.com. Call 1-800-4RELIEF. Better sleep without drugs. See how Z-Factor can get you the Z's that you want. So check it out right now. If you guys want to get a good night's sleep, that is zfactor.com. Relieffactor.com with Z-Factor. Z-Factor from Relief Factor has the formula to help change a lot, helps relax your mind so you can fall asleep quicker, and then helps you sleep soundly throughout the night. Go to relieffactor.com if you're looking for the right formula for better Z's. Give Z-Factor a try. So check it out right now at relieffactor.com. That is 1-800-4RELIEF. That is 1-800-4RELIEF. Visit relieffactor.com. Email us as always, freedom@charliekirk.com, and subscribe to the Charlie Kirk Show podcast page. That is the podcast, Charlie Kirk Show podcast. We have our entire conversation with Bill Maher on our podcast, fully annotated. Also, our conversation with Megyn Kelly and more. So download the Charlie Kirk Show podcast, get a couple episodes, and listen to us. We deeply appreciate that. Email us as always, freedom@charliekirk.com. That is freedom@charliekirk.com. We love hearing from you. That is freedom@charliekirk.com, freedom@charliekirk.com. We're going to be at University of Wyoming tomorrow in Laramie, Wyoming. Looking forward to seeing you there. In addition, next week, we have other events as well that will be announced. So looking forward to seeing you guys on the road. Email us, freedom@charliekirk.com. We'll be right back.
American made. And darn proud of it. The Charlie Kirk Show.
Okay, everybody, welcome back. Email us as always, freedom@charliekirk.com. As a reminder, we have our Student Action Summit coming up in July. We have our campus tour that is still ongoing, almost a 3-month campus tour, and our Young Women's Leadership Summit. Let's play the Young Women's Leadership Summit promo. That's the first event coming up. Let's play Cut 51. That is our Young Women's Leadership Summit, tpusa.com/YWLS. That's tpusa.com/YWLS. Email me, freedom@charliekirk.com. We'll be right back. Okay, everybody, email us freedom@charliekirk.com. By the way, we're live at the Bitcoin.com studio, your place for democratized finance, our place for all Bitcoin-related and crypto-related decisions, Bitcoin.com. So Rosie O'Donnell has decided to self-deport. And to the previous segment, I do want to play off of this, and we're going to go to Rosie O'Donnell. That conversation with Professor Yu is a little bit disturbing. Now, mind you, one part I should have mentioned is that there are 1.6 million illegals that have deportation orders. They've had their due process, so we can ship them out immediately. So let's do that while we are fighting with the courts. Eric emailed us, and Eric is exactly right. It's exactly right. And so the 1.6 million people that are scheduled for deportation, we need to get them all out immediately. The ones that have already gone through all of the process. The most important thing, though, is that the border itself is closed. And separately, we also need to encourage self-deportation like Rosie O'Donnell. Rosie O'Donnell is having fun in Ireland. Play cut 298.
For joining us. As you know, some people entertain the idea of moving abroad after the 2024 election. You actually did it. Tell us about your experience so far, and do you have any regrets?
I have no regrets. Not a day has gone by that I thought it was the wrong decision. I was welcomed with open arms. I knew after reading Project 2025 that if Trump got in, it was time for me and my non-binary child to leave the country. And although I was not one of the celebrities who announced that that's what I would do, I made the decision within my family and my therapist. And should he win, and then when he did, we made the plan into action, and we were gone before he was inaugurated.
If a child of Rosie O'Donnell is non-binary, you can guarantee you that Rosie O'Donnell had something to do with that. It's weird how non-binary weirdos end up with non-binary children so often. If you're 18 and you're trans or non-binary, you have a mental illness. If you're 8 and you're trans or non-binary, your mother has a mental illness. But Rosie O'Donnell is gone. She is self-deported. Is she going to make Ireland great again? And by the way, good luck with her kid in Ireland with all the Muslims running amok. See how her non-binary kid is going to do in downtown Dublin. I mean, this whole thing feels like an SNL skit. The ultimate arc of President Trump's political journey is the self-deportation of Rosie O'Donnell with her non-binary child after reading Project 2025. Tell me that it isn't satire. You see, everybody, the immigration question in front of us, all kidding aside, is a major one. And we know that the unelected judiciary and unelected bureaucracy are going to do everything they possibly can to slow down the gears. But self-deportation is a big one. This is the one part of the Alien Enemies Act that I think that President Trump wanted to employ, which is you never know if you're going to be scooped up next. That if you are here illegally, you should go back to your country of origin. And I will say, we finally have something in common with Rosie O'Donnell. Rosie has no regrets leaving, and we have no regrets that she left. We can finally agree with Rosie O'Donnell about something. Finally. President Trump on self-deportation says, quote, we're going to give them a stipend. We're going to give them some money and a plane ticket. We're going to work with them. If they're good, if we want to send them back in, we're going to work with them to get them back in as quickly as we can. We need to work on people that that are going to voluntarily leave the country, because unfortunately the courts are going to try to grind down the entire deportation process. And that is a threat to the democratic will of the American people. President Trump ran on mass deportations, and the courts are preventing those deportations from happening. Is it time to defy the courts? No, I don't think that's the case. I think the Supreme Court needs to rule that there has to be an expedited process to be able to get people out of the country. Email us, freedom@charliekirk.com. Subscribe to the Charlie Kirk Show podcast. The whole arc has come full circle. Play cut 299.
One of the things people love about you is you speak your mind and you don't use a politician's filter. However, that is not without its downsides, in particular when it comes to women. You've called women you don't like fat pigs, dogs, slobs, and disgusting animals. Your Twitter account...
Only Rosie O'Donnell.
Took him 10 years. President Trump got her out of America. It's the first step in making America great again. He won, and she's in Ireland with her non-binary child. MAGA. See you tomorrow.